Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching or listening to this, and welcome to Link Up Leaders, your direct link to leaders in supply chain and e-commerce. My name is Lisa Kinski. I'm your producer and co-host, and joined as always by Francois Jeffrey. Francois, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm great. I don't know if you know this, but of course I know this. Today is my 1-year anniversary with Noviland.
I got the notification. I was going to send something over, but this is our first time talking this morning.
It is.
It's been a busy morning. Yes, huge congratulations to you, and thank you for joining us a year ago.
Thank you for bringing me on.
It's crazy to think that was a year ago. It felt like you've been here for like 3 or 4 years.
Do you think so? Because it feels to me like I just started. But then I look back at like everything we've done, and it's like it's weird.
I see it as like the accomplishments that we've had. Like we've got to talk to. Well, also we've talked to dozens of awesome people on this one podcast that we both built together. So I mean, I don't know. I see it as like we've had all these great accomplishments in, I guess, a very short amount of time. But to me, it seems like something that should be done over the course of like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've got like the track record and like the familiarity for it to have been way longer, but like it also feels like, because like we're just getting started. There's so much more exciting things coming. Very excited. And shout out real quick, I guess, to any of our listeners who are possibly tuning in from the Prosper Show. Hate that we can't be there, but best of luck to everybody and much success. Safe travels. Y'all have fun in Vegas. Please bring back stories. I don't care what the old adage is. But let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. I'm super excited because we are talking all about breaking that dependency on PPC and everybody putting all their freaking eggs in that PPC basket, not necessarily to like shit on PPC, but like there's so much more, people. So today we are going to talk to the gentleman who knows it all, Troy Johnston with Seller.Tools. Troy, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on, dear. So let's just go on ahead and start with a little bit about your background. So how did you kind of get into this crazy e-commerce space that we all love?
Yeah, it was quite a story in terms of how I got started with Amazon FBA. Because at that time in my life, now 7-8 years ago, I was kind of looking at different side hustles, different ways of just generating and providing new income streams. And it was a story of, real estate investing. And then through looking into that more, I got into this community where the leader of the community was an affiliate for ASM at that point in time, which was sort of in its infancy. I think it was the second iteration of the course. And so got connected with an angel investor, got started with my first brand at that point in time in the beauty space, and dug in, built, scaled, sold that brand, moved on to consulting from there. And then on the other side of that, doing what I'm doing now with Seller.Tools and SaaS solutions for Amazon sellers, and also still running some brands. But really my focus is how we can, and this is what I love, is like, automation strategies, how you can keep a scrappy team, small team, but then still realize all this hyper growth, which we all see now. I mean, there's so much attention now thanks to aggregators and acquisitions, and we're getting a lot of mainstream attention, and Amazon obviously welcoming some maybe less than stellar media and PR, but yeah, that's today's focus and what I really spend all my time and energy on.
Awesome. And we kind of blew over it really quickly, but how long did it take you to kind of get that brand built up and created, built, and then sold? What did that timeline look like?
It was about 2.5 years from the inception of the brand, where I had my first product. And I'm telling you, the story is, I feel like I've rehashed it so many times, but again, I know maybe people are hearing it for the first time, where I feel it's unique. I'm super biased, but I found my first product through, it was a random PDF that they were sending out in the course of like, here's 30 different product ideas. And my friend and colleague at the time, we were both in corporate roles in a travel marketing firm, effectively. And we actually decided to source and sell the same product at the same time.
Which at different brands.
Different brands.
Okay.
So
did you like tell each other that you were doing this, or was it one of those like, I'm going to start selling on Amazon? Oh, no way, man. Me too. And then just like figured it out later.
Well, and I let him when I teamed up with the angel investor, and the way that I synced up with them was that I had to submit to the affiliate why I would be a good fit for this angel investor. They wanted to see, hey, why would this person give you the capital for initial inventory and to take the course, to take ASM? And so I did that, and I was chosen. And so, on goes my efforts to start consuming the course materials and take on the course. But my colleague was very interested too. So I allowed him to come in, sort of see what I was doing with ASM. He was able to tap into the course as well. And so we sort of saw the same thing at the same time. And there was a bit of a mutual understanding of like, we see that this product would make a lot of sense. Did we foresee that we would be, and we were, competitors for the subsequent years? Not necessarily, but we committed to it, and that kicked off both of our brands really around the same time. But I was a slow starter too, because I was still in my corporate, 9 to 5. Mm-hmm. I was definitely still heavily involved in my day-to-day. And so when it came to actually taking the initial steps and building that foundation, it was a handful of months before I was really putting more into it. And at that point in time, FBA was still a little bit unproven. You didn't see the same level of testimonials and the proof of concept, I would say, in the same way. Where now, I think it's the validation is there. It's very clear. Again, for somebody, I'm typically fairly conservative when it comes to my risk tolerance. So this idea of, okay, I would slowly take this course. And this is where, again, my colleague really helped me, because he had an entrepreneurial background. He had businesses that succeeded, businesses that failed. And so we were able to kind of light a fire underneath each other, take the course, and then very quickly from that first product, start adding the next 3, the next 5, the next 10. Because by the time that brand was acquired, it was at about 27 SKUs in the beauty space.
In 2.5 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's
am I mistaken? That's quick, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think beauty is really conducive for that, for scale. Because especially, my philosophy with it too was trying to own as much of putting myself in the customer avatar, which skewed feminine, slightly younger demographic. It was a natural organic skin and hair care brand, is trying to really own the entirety of their getting ready or their bathroom experience, let's say, where it's, you have a toner, you have a serum, you have a moisturizer, you have a, conditioner, you have shampoo, you have all of these different products that meet very specific needs, but they're part of a regimen. And so with strategic partnerships, with that reality of how the customer experiences the product in that category, it was a lot easier to sort of see, well, shoot, if this oil makes a lot of sense, let's do a little bit of analysis to see, is there a supplemental oil or a product that makes sense prior to or after? And it really, like I said, it really helped to expand that product line really fast.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I was thinking to my routine, and each of those products that you named are all different brands in my routine. Yeah. I mean, shampoo and conditioner are the same.
We would want to try to get in front of you and say, hey, we could solve more of this and provide unique solutions. So especially in that niche, which they're pretty, when it comes to more natural organic products, customers can be very, very refined in their tastes and very specific as to their needs. But that was really good for me to getting into e-com of really catering to and understanding that avatar more to inform the next product opportunities. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And what did you do to learn this customer avatar? Aside from, I'm guessing having conversations with the close ones around you that you can easily just reach out to. What did you and possibly your team dig into to even put this together?
Yeah, I would say the two biggest resources that informed a lot of the decisions in terms of the products and positioning was one of my first hires, which I'd like to say intentionally, may have unintentionally, sort of hired my perfect customer. It was a younger mom, very, very much focused on natural organic products, very cognizant of what they brought into the household. And so there was already a criteria, sort of an expectation of what would be a suitable or quality product. And so definitely tapping into her insight and feedback when it came to looking at what the brand was bringing to the table, but then also our vendors, and really having a lot of conversations with them of like, what are you seeing? What's next? What are your partners talking about? What is the trend that you're seeing with your unique lens that can inform what would make sense for us? And then of course they love being engaged. I have found that when you work with those manufacturers and vendors, people love to hear that their insight is being heard, that it's being acted upon, we're investing in it. And that creates a more conducive strategic partnership too. And that was definitely the case where, we were doing more volume, we realized more cost savings, and it became far more predictable, I would say. I can see this now with some of the other categories that we operate in, where thinking of new products seems like you're starting from square one, versus are you tapped into some of the trend insights? What's being talked about? What's being requested? In that example, what are some key ingredients that are kind of bubbling up to where, well, what makes sense with that key ingredient in terms of a product composition or a unique formulation? So yeah, I think having the resources that you utilize day in and day out, and the really great people that are around you, is thinking of how can you sort of broaden their input and feedback. And I think that really helped. I mean, it really served the brand.
Oh, I'm sure.
And what sort of background, I guess, at the time did you have with supply chain and reaching out to manufacturers, finding them, sourcing these products effectively? Did you have any experience at the time?
I didn't. No. I come from more of a project management background, which I think in many ways does help in terms of, being able to effectively organize, allocate resources, sort of take that sort of tact and approach. But especially at that point in time, learning how to effectively communicate. And I think this is true for anybody getting into logistics and cultivating partnerships, is that communication and negotiation, sometimes that dance that you have to do. I mean, I failed my way through it and sort of learned how best to approach different scenarios and move away from being so transactional too. And I think not to reinforce the topic of today, is thinking a little bit broader. Instead of just what A to B, building those true relationships. Checking in on the partners that you're working with. Welcoming even small talk. I think sometimes, again, and this can be cultural, and that's a part of it too, of knowing who you're speaking to, where they're located, what they may be accustomed to, and at the same time putting yourself in their shoes too. Like what would make you a more compelling partner? Is it the relationship? Is it the business dynamics? And if you bring all that to the table, kind of the shotgun approach, I think you'll find out very quickly that you have more conducive, long-term, and valuable relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And these relationships, were they, and not to pry too much into, the internal process of your business, but was it more so in China, or was it domestic?
Domestic.
Okay.
There was a few vendors too, where, as an example, we would source a product that would be, I'm forgetting where the location is, but we would work with a vendor who would then work with another vendor, and we'd need to just kind of manage that relationship and some element of the logistics. But we always had a US based point of contact that was kind of driving and facilitating a lot of that activity.
Gotcha. Okay. So like a sourcing agent, or?
Well, she really was she was invaluable in many ways, because she acted as the manufacturer. She was also kind of a strategic partner. And then she would also help us negotiate some of those rates for that one step removed vendor.
Gotcha.
Which again, I mean, that was I think a really great example. Somebody I have a really great relationship to this day of building that good solid foundation to where we were able to do a lot of creative things, and that oversight's really important too. And again, things like organic certification and the hoops that you have to jump through. There was a really strong human element in that to oversee, to fulfill, to make sure that all of that was maintained. So yeah, she was really great to us in a number of areas.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't imagine the hoops that you have to jump through to get like you said, the organic certification, and like if it's cruelty free, like Leaping Bunny certified, or I don't even know how many brands have that. I just know I've heard of it. But there's got to be so many hoops that you've just got to be human and be like, hey, we forgot this form. Can you get it to me in like 5 minutes? I know your kid at the T-ball game, but if I text it to you, like.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, they're stringent with that, which I think is great. I mean, we get to play the part of consumer and sellers or service providers. So we get to see both sides, but on the through the consumer lens, you can definitely appreciate that, because they are like, there's no skirting around. Here's the rules. Here's the steps, A to Z. But it gives you a little bit more peace of mind when you see that. And not to say that it's applied, broadly across categories. Just what my experience with that in beauty is that, it's legit if you can really follow through and go through all the steps.
Gotcha. It's good insight to have.
Yeah.
From the consumer perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't imagine compliance, particularly with domestic manufacturers, is as complicated than foreign. Foreign is a whole different ballgame, because they tend to also sell to different markets. So if they're specifically selling to customers in the US, they tend to be more familiar with US compliance versus the EU, for example. But to that same point, did you also take that brand international, or is that something that you kept on Amazon.com?
We did. We had a footprint in the EU, most notably in the UK, where we had most of our success. UK and Germany, which I think is often true in terms of what kind of bubbles up and where you see more performance. So some of that was intentional, though. We wanted to get into the UK and really prioritize that, and then make sure we had the in market, have everything translated, optimized. And that was always okay in terms of how it performed, but .com was always more effective.
The bread and butter.
Bread and butter. Yeah.
It's the 800-pound gorilla. You tackle that, and then let the EU figured itself out, and then all the logistics stuff too. I can remember trying to sort that out for the first time and kind of feeling my way through it and working with other partners there. But once we really got it ironed out and it was in a good way, it was steady and stable sales for sure.
Awesome. And obviously you had to build a strong brand behind that to get steady and stable sales, and probably not just pouring all of your money into PPC. So let's dive into the topic of today is what does, for anybody who may be suffering and not realize, no, that's getting dramatic, but like, what does a dependency on PPC kind of look like?
Yeah, I think, and I've thought about this too in terms of, how we're discussing a PPC dependency is, I think it's ironically enough, I think it's kind of a fallback for many sellers, where they sort of see it as one of, if not the only way to really succeed on Amazon. I think, again, as we're talking about this brand, where at that point in time, you turned on your auto campaign, you had your exact match for the handful of keywords that you hoped or thought were important, and that was really the extent of your PPC. There wasn't actively harvesting keywords. There wasn't doing, there wasn't systematic bid optimization. Negative matching was maybe not very sophisticated. And so I think where we're at today with how broad PPC has gotten and all the different ad types, and how Amazon's doing its absolute best to create a pay-to-play platform, I think it really is on brand owners and sellers to sort of say, okay, this may be sort of an easy way to do it, and it sort of checks the box off for Amazon. So it's like you're in Amazon sandbox and you're giving them what they want. But what's the array of alternatives that could be more conducive for long-term success? And I think it's an area too where people that are This tends to be more of my camp, where you're on Amazon, so optimize as much as possible for Amazon. And maybe if it's at the expense of doing more brand building, that's okay. That's okay. But really realize that you're on Amazon truly for a reason. And on the other side, and the other camp can be, well, it's brand building at all costs. I need to do things that may feel abstract. I mean, even identifying what brand building is may feel very nebulous. And I think that, again, that's why I think it's a bit problematic. There's sort of that camp as well. So ultimately, I think it's just important that sellers and brand owners sort of pause, reflect, and say, hey, what's my competitive advantage? If I'm starting to lean towards things that everybody's doing, we know sort of by definition, there's very little room for a competitive advantage there. There has to be the sophistication. There has to be an acute understanding of how to leverage it at a superior level. But if you instead broaden that spectrum and think about things like, influencer marketing, you think about, driving optimized traffic, leveraging other external traffic strategies, owning more of your customer. Those are some high level things that we can look at, where if you truly analyze and go through that exercise of, okay, here's my avatar, understanding my product mix, what messaging and positioning and communication channels make the most sense to make sure I can reliably and engage and support those customers. Because that has just such a major cascade effect, where this is when you're not thinking about creative ways of asking reviews, you're just getting them. You're not getting negative reviews because you're owning your customer. All of these positives that are in that Amazon optimization bucket show up when you make more effort to own the customer. And like I touched on it briefly, and I think this is the biggest problem with PPC is that it is just transactional. Amazon just wants you to sell to their customer, and then hopefully you win to come back and sell to them another day. What we want as brands is to, as much as we are able, own the customer, because we get all of that, right? We get the support, we get the engagement, we can reliably rank, we can have more predictable reviews. Those things all just so happen to be the advantages when it comes to Amazon optimization. So not to get too soapboxy, but this is why I feel very strongly about this in terms of that's where the dependency really gets to be becomes a problem, and one that I think brands, and I always try to be careful to generalize of saying this one size, as much as I say that, negating or removing PPC would be a one size fits all. It's that nuanced perspective of what you sell to who and how are you reliably engaging and owning that relationship. And if off the jump you're thinking, oh, well, PPC doesn't do that, well, then what's next? What are you exploring to kind of effectively address that type of reality?
Mm-hmm. So you said something interesting. Well, you said many interesting things. Let me start there. But something that I hung on to, we'll get to in just a second. We have some folks tuning in. Ria Mittel with Seller Apps saying hello. And then we also have Ryan Kramer tuning in. Troy Johnston is a wealth of knowledge. Clearly, Ryan, we're learning that very quickly. So thank you everybody for watching. But something interesting that you said there was really knowing and owning that customer avatar, or as some people know it as the buyer persona. So what if you think you know who your customer avatar is and you're wrong, and you start selling and you start trying to do all the things, and maybe you're not getting the sales or not getting the engagement or the views or whatever the case may be? I think everybody's natural next thing would just be, oh, more ads. Like how can you identify whether or not you're actually targeting the correct people? What are some of those signs, and how can you pivot?
Right. Yeah. I think if I kind of zoom out a little bit too, and from a macro perspective, and because this is the beauty of Amazon, is that you are capturing existing demand. You are through keywords, through buyer intent. You're capturing demand on the largest commerce platform to ever exist. This is why we all truly love it. And so if we use PPC, let's say that's still a cornerstone of our strategy. I think it's important then for brand owners to think about, okay, we've delivered our ad, our billboard on Amazon was really effective. We've earned the click, we've earned the sale. And then what are we maybe doing post-purchase to be able to further that conversation? And I think this is where packaging, product inserts, stickers, they get a really bad rap because anytime they get attention, it's when somebody's done it blatantly wrong and against terms of service, explicitly so. Where if we can do so in a sophisticated but softer way, there's a multitude of options that are available to us. And I always like to lead post-purchase strategies with what type of value can you deliver right away? Content, ebook, free sample, free gift, free product, you name it, some way of delivering value right away to that customer so that door is open. And then from there, if the question is, well, who is this customer? What is their avatar or profile? That's where a customer journey that includes some of those queries, those questions, can help to inform and sort of test that hypothesis, because that's got to be your starting place. If you're accustomed to PPC and it's just 0, 1, and there's no color to that customer, name, face, regional insights, all of these things that are slowly coming together with things like DSP and more sophisticated PPC ad types, but your post-purchase strategy can help to address that and inform it and test that hypothesis to start to see. So that's what I think you have to be entertaining if you're still using PPC to sort of win, to address that engagement, that support, and inform who that customer avatar is. Take your hypothesis, test it in a post-purchase strategy, capture what feedback you can, monitor and sort of and see what activities they take part in, and let that start to paint a picture. And what's really great about most post-purchase strategies is that you're already capturing contact information. We use ManyChat. It's a great way because we're all on Facebook way too much. That's a reality that we use to our advantage. We have customers come through. All of a sudden, we see their face. We have their name. We can reliably contact them. We can ask for phone number to SMS. We can ask for email to email them at a later date. And all of that we get, as opposed to just PPC, you can start to see where we have a lot more room, a lot more potential to get more and offer more in that relationship.
That's so beautifully said.
I'm doing tiny claps for anybody listening that can't see me.
I need to get off my soapbox. You guys are so nice for listening to me on that.
No,
it's why you're here.
Yeah, that is a very good reason why you're here. But to me, also, what it sounded like is a few different specialties that are merged together. Right. So marketing, for example, might consist of a PPC specialist. It might consist of someone that oversees the branding, someone that writes your content. Whereas I see the customer journey and that post-sale, customer retention and understanding the customer lifetime value. That is more of like a merchandising hat, where it's like thinking, what are they doing aside from just engaging with the brand? I know they both are very similar. Is that something that you have separated out in your company or with your brands, I should say? Or is that something that just your marketing takes care of as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, for our brands, it's still underneath a marketing umbrella. Okay. It's I love that idea though of where you can take it, because that segmentation, that it opens up that potential. And I don't know if you would agree with this, but I see that potential growth implying some amount of complexity, and I think that intimidates sellers and sometimes brand owners. And we, take it all the way up to brand aggregators, where because there's more needs to fulfill, there's not an excitement in the same way of, oh, let me go into Campaign Manager and turn on a few ads, versus this layer of, man, now I'm building up this list of 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 customers by virtue of having a mechanism, being able to reliably support, and then knowing what I'm doing after the fact, whether that is merchandising or, whatever meets some of your brand objectives.
Yeah. I mean, that's, and it all ties back into understanding your customer persona. I mean, it's everything that you said before is essentially painting that bigger picture of how can we keep these customers coming back, right? Mm-hmm. Just like you had let's say the makeup brand, how can we make sure that they have all the different pieces and parts to their overall experience? Because if they need a conditioner, maybe before they start washing their hair. Then they put the serum on. I don't know the process exactly. I just kind of like keep doing thing.
God bless. It's toner before your hyaluronic acid, before your moisturizer.
Troy, I'm sure you know all this.
Hey, he's got it. He's spot
on. But where I was getting to that is you mentioned one thing, which is ManyChat. And I know that's one piece that you mentioned can help you put together that buyer persona, which is sort of the beginning of that overall journey, right? Or is that something that you continue refining? I guess it's kind of a flywheel in a sense, right? You can start with ManyChat, or you can continue with ManyChat as you continue building this persona. But how does ManyChat work with Amazon? I personally don't know too much about it. I know a lot of companies use it, but like, how does that work?
Yeah, and I think your the flywheel analogy is absolutely fitting. Where if we take the PPC, still utilizing PPC, and then you have a post-purchase strategy that ties into ManyChat, that as soon as a customer then opts in and wants to receive, again, in the ways that I like to utilize it, receives the value that you're sending, it opens just so many doors to then restart that process, where instead of post-purchase, now we're on the pre-purchase side of things, and we're thinking about, okay, what offers, what promotions, what loyalty programs. Because when we talk about things like, repurchases, one of the really great pre-purchase strategies, let's say a customer's bought a product and they're not on Subscribe and Save, you can, in a pre-purchase strategy, re-engage them, incentivize Subscribe and Save. And I use that word very carefully, but it's actually, this is again in a terms of service friendly way, is say, hey, we'd love you to take advantage of Amazon's program to set it and forget it for this product on a cycle, on a timing and schedule that makes the most sense for you. And we're running a promotion where you get a $5 Amazon gift card to be able to do that. And so you think about, if you can 4X, 5X, again, depending on your product and price, what that LTV looks like by giving a short, very easy, sweet little bit of value. That's a really cool way that you can use ManyChat for all of that activity. You're just bringing it back in. That flywheel is, like I said, it's perfect, because it's, how do we take advantage of the fact that, okay, now we know this customer, how to contact them, what type of things that we have going on, what's meaningful for us in our product mix and objectives. And then, if you can tie it back in, whether it's Subscribe and Save on your website, again, you can start to, when you own the customer, again, I hate to bring up the intimidation factor, but I think that's why sellers are apprehensive, is they're like, wait, this is a really powerful thing. What do I do with it? And it's like, maybe just think about, even if it's just promotions and offers initially, totally fine, but you can do all kinds of cool stuff when you know your customer, starting there. But then when you do more to own that relationship, it's sort of yours to do with it what you will, and then feed that back in if you'd like in the process.
Yeah. But is ManyChat like its own app? So, like, I haven't looked into it at all.
Or like a plugin?
It's a platform that integrates with Facebook Messenger, and so it sort of layers over the top of that to where, if we were to send each other Facebook messages, it would look that same way to the consumer. It would just be brand to consumer having that conversation, and it's heavily integrated in such a way. And this is where Seller.Tools we're integrated with ManyChat as well, to where what ManyChat is great at, what it's really effective at, is beyond being on Messenger and we're all there, just a huge pool, massive pool of potential customers and customers, is owning the customer journey. Because, when you respond in a ManyChat flow, we can take you through next steps, and we can see if you're eligible, and we can have you answer questions in a format that you're used to. It's very mobile friendly as well. It's also a really easy way to capture more customer information. It'll automatically populate your email. It's quick and easy to format and add in your phone number. So for us as brands, when you can seamlessly capture more customer information and remove that friction, ManyChat's really, really effective for that. And then, again, where we tie in is more the Amazon specific strategies. So if we were on the pre-purchase side and we wanted a customer to buy our product based on a keyword, using an optimized link, using search, find, buy, we can encourage them to go do that. They would get their Amazon order ID. And then if they brought that back into their mini chat flow, where in a Facebook message, we just said, hey, drop your Amazon order ID, Seller.Tools will actually go in, verify that order, make sure it's real, make sure it's shipped, capture even more customer and order information, and then allow the customer to go into the next steps in the mini chat flow. But we cover a lot of things too in terms of our features. It's effectively what we as sellers wanted to see show up in mini chat, to where it's a fully automated sequence. That's one of the coolest parts too, is that you're capturing customer information, and then because it's automated, they're not waiting a day, 48 hours, 72 hours to hear back from you or to complete a step. They are, and often is the case, they're going through this mini chat flow completely themselves, in many ways supporting themselves, but everybody's winning because they're saving time. There's no human error, human delays, and they're getting what they want because that's why they're completing the process. And we're, hopefully setting up in such a way to hit some of our objectives on Amazon as well.
And can you utilize the mini chat flow to shift them to your own website, let's say? So as a brand owner, let's say we have our own Shopify store, or maybe we're building our own platform, whatever the case may be. Can sellers use that to do that same thing?
Absolutely. And ManyChat has gotten so big that they actually integrate directly with Shopify, with PayPal, so payment processors, other merchants, and that direct Shopify integration allow you to seamlessly display your products. They can click through and they can actually transact right there. So it's a really slick experience, and because it's so mobile friendly, we're all on Facebook, and then wherever we're at, if we've got our phone at a reach away, we can go through that experience in a really seamless fashion.
Is it also integrated directly with the Instagram DMs? Because I think Facebook has moved to everything being housed all in one platform now.
Yeah, so that's the big news we're all excited about. We're actually sort of in the midst. They're about to have their Instagram summit with a major release of Instagram automation, and through our beta testing, it looks like it's going to be really huge. Nice. It's just kind of untapping this whole other channel that is, again, very mobile friendly, is becoming far more shopper and e-commerce friendly. But then we can still just take that customer as that initial touch point and then drive them through a really cool, very elegant mini chat flow. It's pretty wild what we can do now with with some of these integrations and these tools, to where sometimes I have to remind people, it's like, don't think of it like a robot. You're sending real customers through this journey and through this process. But it's pretty neat how we're able to, especially in an Amazon driven way, own that relationship more. But then also you can just keep it simple of like, hey, we've got your attention here. What relative information can we capture from you? What value can we send your way? Always leading with that. And let that just be the mechanism, the way in which we do it.
Very neat.
Is there an average LTV that having a mini chat flow versus not having a mini chat flow would bring to a business?
I don't have numbers that I would pull from necessarily beyond my own experience. I would probably estimate with the control that allows you to have, especially if the average or the median in terms of the typical LTV that you can expect, or the typical brand, I would probably conservatively say you could expect 3 to 4 times what you'd be able to do. And it's one of those things where email's great. SMS is one of the most powerful ways. So texting your customers, it's one, again, I always stress, with great power comes great responsibility, where you don't want to blow up your customers. You have character count limits already in place. But I mean, when you have 90-95% open rates, when you have well-timed sales and promotions that can re-engage those customers, it's much better than sending an email with a 4 or 5% open rate. It's just far more effective. And then, like I said, I like to think about that of a lot of sellers may be hesitant to incentivize things like subscribe and save, but even just having 3 more orders versus 1, that's why I give that example where we've seen it and it's been some time now. But that's often the case. If you just make it available and sort of sweeten it a little bit, make the offer a little bit more compelling and easy to do, you can have that person that has already purchased, voted with their dollars, just come back in and say, hey, if you love this product, set it and forget it. You could cancel anytime.
Absolutely. And just to back up and cover something really quick, LTV, of course, standing for lifetime value for anybody who may not have been familiar with that. And then also, I just love how you said with great power comes great responsibility with the texting thing, because those honestly drive me bonkers. But I can understand how you're going to have a much higher success rate, because like when you think about the majority of folks that I know at least are using Gmail as their, email service provider, and it has the inbox, your primary, and then your social, and then your promotions, and everything that comes in even after a post order goes into that promotions, and you don't get that little notification on your Gmail app. It just gives you a primary. But boy, can millennials not stand there being a little text message bubble. We have to open it. So I can see how that would be powerful.
Absolutely. That's an itch you have to scratch. So it's
oh yes.
Do you have to keep them open? Yeah. Keeping as low of a number as possible is important. So you could essentially turn your PPC spend. You can cut that down by a tremendous amount by just getting them into something like a ManyChat flow. Is sort of what I'm hearing, and making sure that you control that customer journey itself, which is where the flywheel comes back into effect. It's like if you ever start to run low on, maybe promotions or offers or products that you want to push out, then you could always influx or you could have an influx of traffic back into that ManyChat flow potentially through PPC. Right. Does that worry that itself can create a dependency on PPC?
Yeah, and this is where I think there's an interplay here too, because I've seen this, and it's something that can definitely work where, because Amazon is the demand engine, and creating demand is like the hardest challenge in business, let alone e-commerce and thinking about D2C, is maybe there's a place for PPC where it helps us leverage that demand, and it's sort of the bigger piece of the pie. But then when our post-purchase strategy is in place and we start to grow that customer list, it also sort of tapers off in relationship to that. But that assumes that you have that understanding of PPC to make it cost effective or drive the right type of ROI. And you have the mechanism and process to build that customer list. And then if you taper that off, then you can then the list that you've built becomes your pre and post purchase strategy. And PPC is more of it's not we've been using the dependency. It's not the dependency that we often see. It's just a tool in your toolkit where maybe you're still harvesting keywords. Maybe you're killing it with exact match. What do I often see? And I definitely would want to hear your thoughts on this, is we see time and time again that sellers are frustrated. Their ACOS is getting out of control. They're looking for different ways of being able to approach PPC, and the layering of different ad types and some of the sophistication is great because it's sort of new territory. But there's an often cited statistic where it's like 25-30% increase in ACOS year over year. So it's just getting to be so cost intensive that, like I said, owning your customer where that becomes valuable, there's an ROI imbalance there. So more of a tool in the toolkit, not so much this is what I do on Amazon, is set up campaigns and, be willing to maybe overspend, which we used to do. Again, I've used those strategies where you would, overspend on PPC with the hopes of the visibility, the ranking, it creating a snowball effect. But the criteria for me is always, can I reliably rank a product for my most important keywords? And when it comes to PPC, it often falls short, being able to do it effectively.
And I would imagine that customer list is one of the most important parts that a company like Perch, Elevate Brands, Thrasio, that they look for before purchasing a brand itself is having that robust customer list. And it's essentially creating their own flywheel, because then they can I think, I don't know what the regulations behind it, but then they could cross use some of their customers and strategically start buying up, let's say, a bunch of sports brands, and they know they have customers in football and soccer and whatever they mesh together. Makeup, for example, if they just generally get into health and wellness and cosmetics, and then they cross-reference all those. That's genius. That's some genius shit right there.
We're on the same wavelength, man. Yes.
It's one of those things where it's like, what's the TikTok? Like, what sounds like it should be illegal but isn't? Like, that's one of those things that sounds like it shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah,
So,
well, and it gets a little bit hairier too, especially like in the EU and GDPR.
With GDPR, that's the first bell that went off in my head. I was like, "Oh yeah, you gotta be careful."
Yeah, which I mean, sometimes it just means that you have to outreach as the brand and sort of allude to another product or offer. It's when there is the pollination at the list level instead of at the offer level, where maybe you're directing of like, hey, our partner's at, and this limited time offer is available here. That you tend to be safe with. And of course, definitely make sure in terms of regional restrictions that you cover that base. But that cross-pollination of customers is absolutely spot on. It's the money's in the list. And I think we've forgotten that in terms of, again, like I said, even in the Amazon optimization bucket and kind of end of the spectrum that I'm on, is that it's sort of a fold in the process where you still want to do keywords right. You still want listing optimization, competitive analysis, as many automations in place as possible. But that list is really where you can create that separation. Because if I need to, again, rank for 3 or 4 keywords in the next week, just turning on break even or overspend PPC it's not going to reliably allow me to rank. Where if I can deploy, I can do an internal giveaway. One of our strategies with ManyChat, I can reach out to 1,200 customers and let them know this offer within this timetable is something that you can take advantage of, own the pre-purchase, and then have them follow through the process.
Yeah, that's genius. It sounds like it's not only that, I think of it from a supply chain level where they now have all these complex supply chains that they can mesh together and utilize, let's say that the cost savings that you saw when you started to expand or order more units, or if they cross-pollinate products within different categories using the same suppliers, I'm sure they can negotiate better terms. They can set up better routes. They can make better partnerships with, let's say, Maersk or any of the shipping carriers. There's just so much more that goes into it. And that's why I imagine that, I saw that Elevate Brands I think they got a seed round of funding of $250 million yesterday, right? That's absolutely nuts. But their prediction, I think, is that the industry itself is going to, did they say double? They said either double or triple in the next 5 years. And the only way that would be possible is if you do own the majority share, if you don't rely on solely PPC, because then PPC is just going to set this new tier of competition, right? Where it's just a lot of new money that's coming in, a lot of investing and debt that's being taken on just to spend on PPC means nothing if you don't own that customer and you're not able to sell them more things. So the customer lifetime value ultimately has to go up. Otherwise it just doesn't make sense. Otherwise you're just burning dollars essentially. Are there any other strategies that brand owners could or should be taking to avoid this PPC dependency when we are seeing the cost go up year over year and competition only going to go up with more money coming into the industry as well? Yeah.
I think post-purchase is really, really important. I think it's often the low-hanging fruit. It can be missing altogether. So figuring out if there is a mechanism, process in place for your customer to expect to further engage with you. Again, this doesn't have to be, pushy or salesy. It can literally be, you've combed through your listing and your reviews and you found, okay, these are FAQs or negative reviews that have popped up. Can I do a quick FAQs video and deliver that through my post-purchase and tell the customer, we want to make sure you have this information. for their willingness to follow through and further that engagement. And that's on the post-purchase side. On the pre-purchase side, I briefly just touched on influencer marketing and how effective that is in terms of the reach, the audience, but the product, let's say the product market fit, for lack of a better phrase. Doing some of that research and discovery can really help you as a brand find what is that, what can offer that deluge of relevant, ready to purchase customers, sort of conversion ready customers. And this is, again, where it gets to be nuanced. I always hesitate to give a more general answer, because understanding your product, your avatar, and then maybe where they're going and congregating, who they're listening to or watching, is going to take some time to do that analysis and do some of that lifting. And then you need to do the outreach, presumably to an influencer, to create a scenario that makes plenty of sense for them. Put yourself in their shoes. What are they probably accustomed to being asked to do? What makes your product, your offer more enticing? Or maybe if it's even a longer term relationship from influencer to ambassador, that door can always be open. But that's a really great way to think about pre-purchase strategies, because similarly, we can work with that influencer, have them share a link. That link will take a customer through a mini chat flow. As soon as they opt in, we see name, we see face, we can encourage them to share any relevant information. And then we direct them through, in that mini chat flow, through the steps that are part of our offer at that time. So, and the last one I would maybe throw into the mix, this is kind of the easier one, but may not be as effective, especially if you don't have an expert in this capacity, is running paid ads, whether it's Facebook ads, whether you're running ads on Pinterest. Google ads are very effective. So even though that's in the third bucket, I would maybe put that a little bit higher. It's also tends to be a little bit easier to set up. But if that's your external traffic mechanism, you can still drive a customer to a flow or sequence to capture all relevant information. And then once they purchase, they are part of your list and a customer you can engage with on an ongoing basis. So those are kind of three different areas. I just like post-purchase because it's a catch-all, right? If you're running PPC and you're like, wait, this customer's bought and I'll never hear or see from them again, it's left completely to chance. Immediately when that door opens, the ROI potential it shoots through the roof. And you're spot on. I mean, you touched on in terms of the list, who values that? How does that show up come the day of acquisition? You know, the customer that has highly engaged list of customers that they can go back to, whether it's 5,000, whether it's 10,000, doesn't have to be astronomical numbers. That is going to be a valuable resource that you can, add it on your proverbial balance sheet. It's something that is very valuable when it comes time to hand over your brand to somebody who hopefully has that sophistication. When we're talking about aggregators or other, strategic PEs, you name it, there's so much money coming in. It's great. It's a great time to be selling. But these are the advantages that you want to be taking advantage of too.
Absolutely brilliant. What a great summary of all the things that folks can do other than all of that PPC. And if anybody has any questions about that or anything else that you've shared today, where can folks get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can find us at Seller.Tools. That is the website. You can get access, and we have a free 14-day trial. So definitely dive in and try out everything. We do even have a PPC tool. So we do cover that. But we do so in a way that touches on how I like to approach it as well, of how do I get in and get out? Give me the 3 steps. Let me do search term isolation, which is kind of an advanced strategy. But if you can do that in one click, if you can find new keywords and then get rid of the losers, that's something that, again, somebody at the early stages of learning about PPC can jump in, do that. But again, I'm going to champion, especially what we do and what we focus on in terms of our own brands, is build that list, kind of let that take over more of your business, because then you can predictably rank and organically rank to just welcome sales at scale. And then you just, again, capture more reviews and you mitigate negative reviews. Those are as bad as anything else. You do the review math and you see when you get 1-star negative reviews, that is such a shot to your growth for any individual product.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And is there any specific size seller that would benefit from Seller.Tools if you have like X number of SKUs or X amount of revenue annually?
Yeah, we cover a pretty wide array of tools. So we do have something sort of for everyone. What often tends to be the case and what we see through looking at our customer profiles and the customer mix is typically that intermediate seller that is at least doing that 5 to 10K a month, maybe thinking about, okay, what's next? And they have a foundation in their space. But that can cover, again, if you've got 1 or 2 SKUs, if you have hundreds of SKUs. We work with a lot of arbitrage folks as well with some of our review acquisition strategies. But yeah, we have a pretty nice mix and try to cover everyone. And a lot of the things too, like keyword research, listing optimization, all that stuff to where, cool, you're sending traffic, you're maybe earning the click through PPC, how conversion ready are you, and how we can help and support you there.
Fantastic. And you do the post-purchase automation too, right? The ManyChat flows and everything that we also discussed today.
Absolutely. Yeah. We actually have free ManyChat flows that cover this exact strategy. We have a free insert too, where you can just tweak it to include your brand and product. Because that tends to be the hardest part with ManyChat, is that building out the actual flow elements. What does that customer journey look like? So we wanted to tackle that to where once you can plug in your insert, that door is open for that customer to engage with you. You can deliver that value. We can automatically send a TOS compliant review request. It's really slick what we've been able to. Again, it's stuff I wish 7-8 years ago we had, but now it's a really powerful set of tools.
Fantastic. And again, that is available at Seller.Tools, which we've linked in the description of the video and will be linked in the description of the audio as well. Troy, thank you so much again for joining us. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And if you guys liked what you saw today or heard, be sure to give us a like, comment, subscribe, share, rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And if you're not listening on Apple Podcasts, maybe on Google Podcasts or Spotify, go on ahead and turn on those auto downloads so that you never miss a discussion with leaders in supply chain and e-commerce like Troy Johnston. Troy, thank you again, dear. And we will see everybody soon.
All right.